for coming to the Chicago Public Schools presentation of Something You Meet. My name is Jenny McGarrett, and I'm the Digital Learning Coordinator for a network of 25 Chicago Public Schools, one of which is the one you're sitting in, called the Academy for Urban School Leadership.
I'm Autumn Laidler. I'm a teacher here at NTA. I teach 3rd and 4th grade science, and I have a class set of iPads in my classroom. So when Jenny and I thought about doing this presentation, social media, especially with our kids, we think of it a lot of times as being something negative that they're using. We don't want cell phones in schools. We don't want kids texting at school. We want these things to be kind of one world at school, one world is those things. And so when we came together, we thought about we're actually using a lot of those things in our classroom, but we're not using them in the traditional way. So we decided to show you some ways we're not using social media. So we actually had a really fun time coming up with this. We thought about Twitter. Jenny and I are both on Twitter. There's a lot of educators on Twitter. Our kids tweet. In class, they're tweeting now. But everyone's kind of stereotype of Twitter is like the celebrity, Justin Bieber, all that. So we decided to find a non-example of what we're doing. We found Kim Kardashian. Now, I've been on Twitter for maybe 2 years, a year and a half. I don't have even close to the number of followers she has. But the beauty of it is like, here's what she's tweeting about. So here's her recent tweet about she can't sleep tonight because her baby Kanye West isn't here to cuddle. And so when we think of social media, we're like, is that really what we want our kids to be thinking about or using it for? So no, we don't, and we're not using it that way. So then we went on and thought about Facebook, another thing that our kids, even though you have to be 13, so many of our kids are on, they're using it. We're using something in our classroom that looks really similar to Facebook. And when kids go on Facebook, they see things like this. So they go on Facebook and they see, again, we have our friend Kim Kardashian like tweeting about what she's eating or Facebooking about it. And look how many people like this. 22,000 people like what she had as a snack. Like what we see this as like not a valuable tool or a tool that's valuable that's not being used for value. So these are our ways that we're not using social media. And then too, another concern, especially with middle school age kids, elementary and high school kids, is this idea of using social media as a form of bullying. We hear cyberbullying, we see that on the news all the time where people are affected by that, and we have kids hiding behind the keyboard and the screen saying like, oh, I can say whatever I want because it's just typing, it's not me saying it to someone. And so we see all of those things happening on Twitter, on Facebook, and we see it as, we see our kids hiding behind that and having that face of like, I can be whoever I want, but we're seeing that being used in a really positive way in the classroom. We see it with kids who are maybe using it to voice them, give themselves a voice when they wouldn't normally have one, when they would be too embarrassed to stand up and say something or raise their hand, but they're more than happy to do it when they have that screen to be behind and it's just their avatar up. So I'm going to throw it to Jenny.
So that was all the reasons why that was evil. That was our quote-unquote evil. We don't want our kids to be cyberbullying or to be tweeting to Kim Kardashian in class. However, there's also a happy place for social media where unicorns and rainbows live. And that's what we're going to show you today, is the happy place. So we want to show you how kids, basically the happy place is when kids are amplified to be able to share their learning and their knowledge with the world, and to receive learning and knowledge with the world. So the whole concept is, our kids are right here, and we were talking about this the other day about how Brittany would love to go to China right after lunch and talk to people about the factories there. However, her parents would probably be upset if I drove her to O'Hare, put her on a plane, and sent her to China after lunch today. And yet, using social media, she can virtually send a Brittany avatar to China to have a discussion or write a blog or use Skype to communicate and exchange information. And so we want to look at 4 concentric circles. I was a math teacher, so I want to make sure I get all my numbers right today. 4 concentric circles in terms of communities to which our students are able to amplify themselves. The first one, of course, is the classroom community. Even in the classroom, it's really hard for a kid to get their ideas out. Think about shy students, but also think about if you're one student in a class of 35 kids. Oftentimes, you can barely tell your thought to your neighbor during a think, pair, share, much less the entire classroom. So social media helps to amplify them out to the class. And then to the school community, very rarely do we see schools where there are first graders sharing their ideas with 8th graders and vice versa. But using these tools, they're able to share their thinking and learning with everybody. everybody. Then there's the networked community, and by networked community we mean anybody that your teacher knows. So it doesn't necessarily have to be Miss Brooks, who I know, who works at NTA and is across the hallway, or Mr. Sobel, who works downtown at Chicago Public Schools. It could be my friend Jae-Hoon Hyun, in Korea, who's working in an international school, and they can speak to her. It doesn't, so the geography no longer becomes an issue, it's who we know. But then the coolest one is the global community. And that means maybe Autumn doesn't know the director of a huge environmental project that's going on in Anchorage, Alaska, but her kids are able to tweet, and all of a sudden the director of that environmental project in Alaska is responding to the kids' thoughts on a green project. That's where we get the really cool type thing. So we're going to take you through these concentric circles today, and so we'll start small and grow big. We're going to start, though, with our school. National Teachers Academy has been open for a little over a decade. We're a pre-K through 8th grade school. We're a neighborhood school. I worked here for 7 years until this summer. Now I work everywhere. And Ms. Laidler still works here. We have about 450 students, 98% of whom are African American and 98% of whom qualify for free and reduced lunch. So this isn't a charter school. This isn't a school where we have gads of money and we're picking the kids who are here. This is a real population of real students with real school funds doing really cool stuff. So we really want you to keep that in mind as you're seeing this.
So as I was saying earlier, we all are very familiar with Facebook, and if you're in the school community, you know about Edmodo. So Edmodo is something that looks almost exactly like Facebook. The kids have an avatar, they can leave posts, they can have those kind of threads of communication, they can post work or pictures. And what Jenny's showing you right now, the powerful part of this is getting all of our kids involved in one conversation, or even having kids involved in a smaller conversation. Today, in fact, my kids in class, we were Skyping with another class. They were having a conversation silently while that was going on to talk about their ideas, share where they thought this class may be located. They could respond to someone else. So if someone was lost, someone else can type to them. All you need to do is open this app and you'll be found. So it's a really powerful tool that we've had in our classrooms, and as you can see here, Jenny's going to talk to you a little bit about a student that she had this kind of aha moment with, where I see 120 students. I see each of my classes for 1 hour. So if I talk to each kid and hear each kid's conversation in that day, that's a monumental day for me. But with Edmodo, I'm able to not only facilitate that conversation and see that conversation, but I don't have, when John Paul's typing, he doesn't have to wait for someone else to finish before he can add what he needs to. And it just is really giving voice to every member of our classroom.
So I had a student 2 years ago who, and that was my first year with the one-to-one iPad pilot, so we were exploring ways to amplify the kids' voices, and he said he wouldn't say anything. So I had looped with him 3 years ago. I had him as a 4th grader, and then 2 years ago he was a 5th grader, and in the whole first year I was trying every single teacher move to get him to talk. Literally, I'd walk by him and I'd be like, hey man, I'm gonna give you this question. I'd pre-print the question, I'd be like, 5 minutes, here's the timer, I'll be back at you. I even at one point was like, here's the answer, just read it out loud. He would not participate. He was so painfully shy, and I couldn't get him to participate. We tried talking to him after school. One-on-one, he had a lot to say. He'd stay after school and he would talk my ear off, but you got another 34th and 5th graders around him, and he didn't want to say anything. What was really nice is when we started doing these chat discussions on Edmodo, much like a Facebook wall, all of a sudden I was able to get this really different kind of formative assessment. So when you're teaching, usually you're looking is the answer right or is it wrong? And sometimes if you're a really good teacher, why is it wrong and how can I help them? But now I was able to look at not just what they were saying, but how often they were saying things and the way that they said it. So if the answer is 7, great, but are you saying the answer is 7, or, well, first I multiplied, and then I thought about the keyword this, and then I realized I needed to do X, Y, and Z, and so that's why I think the answer is 7. And what I found out was the student not only had so much to say, but he was not inhibited at all once he got behind an iPad. So he's sitting at his keyboard typing out. The kids are still around him, but because he didn't have to say it out loud and he was able to type it, he had 6 comments in 10 minutes. Now, if you think about typing on an iPad, first of all, as a 5th grader, and second of all, how fast he's got to be typing, that's amazing. The thing that's even cooler were all of those were responsive comments. They weren't just, let me say yes to what she's saying. A lot of students will say, yes, I agree with Malia, or sure thing, Miss Lather, you got it. He had original ideas that were directly responding to other students' ideas, and all of a sudden, he was a part of our classroom again. So that's a really good example of him being able to amplify himself to the class.
And I would also add to what Jenny's talking about, so not only is that becoming not only a part of the community, but your classroom creates this virtual community, and this can grow beyond your classroom and into your school. Last year, Jenny and I were part of a team with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, and we did a museum walk where we talked about equity in education. So we spent almost 6 weeks teaching our kids about the history of U.S. public education. Chicago Public Schools talked about what equity is, what equality is, why those things are important. And we got to a point with our kids where we were looking at neighborhood, actually Chicago Public Schools, and we were looking at high schools. And we're looking at all the different types. So if you know anything about Chicago Public Schools, there's gifted, there's selective enrollment, there's magnet schools, there's neighborhood schools, there's military academies, there's small schools, there's all these different types of schools, and every single one of our kids who are, at this point at least, as close as 3 years away from being in high school, we're looking around and saying like, I didn't know that. I didn't know I had these different choices for high schools, and talking about the equity of that. So if I don't know about those choices, what does that mean for what I'm probably going to choose or where my family's going to send me? So they felt really empowered to think about, we now have this information. We know we're surrounded by kids in our school who are going to have to make these choices really soon. We go to school with middle schoolers. How can we share with them what we found out about high schools? So what they decided to do during their performance is they did all this research and they created slides. So they just did a slide with the high school name on it. They talked about the enrollment, the attendance, college readiness. They talked about ACT scores, and then they also talked about all those kind of other programs that kids want to know about. Do they have a band? Do they have sports teams? Do they have a drama club? And our kids made these slides, and what they did from the slides is they made a website. And then from the website, they created QR codes. QR codes, if you're not familiar, are the things that you can just snap with your smartphone, you can scan. So what the kids did, they created these slides and then they made QR codes that people could link in to their slide that they made. So they created the information that they wanted to share. We want to teach you about Dyett High School. We want to teach you about Whitney Young High School. We want to teach you about schools around the city that you could maybe want to go to, and we're going to tell you about why you should want to go there. So then they created this map of the city, and they put the QR codes and about the location where that school would be. So when they looked at the map, you can see that they did schools throughout the city, but they had this map out so that anybody who came to their performance could get information that they had curated and collected about area high schools. Because they were so surprised they didn't know it, they knew that there were probably other people in our community, in our school, that could benefit from that information. So they literally put their voice in a QR code and a website, and it was an amazing experience for them.
What's really cool about this is if you think about it, they could have printed out those slides and put it on a bulletin board, right? And you probably it would have taken you less time to just walk by and be like, oh yeah, Lane Tech. But then there's that air of mystery of scanning the QR code. But here's the really cool thing, is if you, let's say we have this map out sitting by our front elevator for months after the museum walk, and we had visitors scanning it. But what I really liked was each of our visitors was taking a piece of our students' thinking home with them. Because when you scan something with your QR code on your phone, it opens up into your web browser. And then if you're like, oh, I don't have time to look at this, later that night or a week later, you can go back into your browser history and be like, oh, Autumn, I saw this really cool thing at NTA, let me pull this back up, take a look at this. And now they're taking our kids' thoughts with everyone else. So with that being said, our students are all blogging, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but if you notice, we sandwich board them. And no, they're not on strike, they're here for something else. Their signs are all QR codes to share with you their thoughts and their digital learning. So we're going to do a live example of QR codes right now. If you have a QR reader, please go ahead and open it up. And if you don't, there are literally dozens of them that are free for Android and iOS. So you can go ahead to your app store and download it. And our kids are going to be coming around right now and brandishing their QR codes out for you to scan. And then they're also going to be available to discuss what you see when you scan their code. So we'll give you about 5 or 10 minutes to get to know our kids and their work. And then you're going to get to hear from them a little bit more formally later in their presentation. Okay. Okay, so hopefully everyone got a chance to get to some of the students' blogs, but if worse comes to worse and you weren't able to get the technology functioning at a technology conference, which, by the way, is the hallmark that you're at a technology conference. If the technology works, you're at a math conference. Then we are going to give you a website at the end, which has links to all the things that we're showing you, every website we talk about and all the students' blogs. So next up, we're going to be talking about the networked community. And as a reminder, this was a kind of vague term that Autumn and I went back and forth, like, how do you say that? But we meant any teacher or person, any contact with whom that we have connected personally. So outside of our immediate geographic area, anyone in the world, but we have to know them.
Know them, and that we use that term loosely, because I think I know a lot of people on like Twitter, but I don't. So
we know Kim Kardashian.
Just like I know Kim Kardashian on Twitter, right? So Skype is something that I've been using a lot actually recently in my classroom, and I used a little bit last year. If you're familiar, most people are using Skype to keep in touch with family that's out of town or friends that live in different places. In the classroom, though, we're using it as a teaching tool. We're either bringing experts into our classroom to explain something to our kids virtually, or we're bringing other classrooms into our own classroom. So last year, Jenny did this amazing grant writing with her kids, and she wanted them to know what another school had at their school. Here's what we have as far as technology, what do you have? So they shared those ideas over Skype. So nobody got on a bus and came to NTA, nobody from NTA packed their lunch and went up the street to another school. We did all virtually. So like Jenny said, another contact that she had. So what I've been doing in my classroom, our kids have been doing what's called mystery Skype. And it's very mysterious and fun, and what they do is they get another classroom on Skype. They have to figure out where in the United States this classroom is, and this classroom is trying to figure out where in the United States we are. So we have jobs in our classroom. We have kids who answer questions. So if the student from the other school says, "Are you west of the Mississippi River?" we have a kid who comes up and says, "No, we're not." We have other jobs where they have partnerships. So we have one person who has a map. Their partner is on Edmodo, that Facebook-like program where they're back channeling. So as the kids hear an answer, their partner will whisper to them, "They don't border an ocean." So then on Edmodo, their partner types that in, like, "This school does not border an ocean," so we know they're in the interior of the United States. So they all have a job during this, and they've connected with other kids their age that they've never met, that they've just discovered where they are. And so they're not only doing this mini geography lesson of knowing states and knowing what states they border, or knowing other geographical things. It's done in this way where they're meeting other kids actually from that location. So it's not just this, "Oh yeah, here's a map, here's Indianapolis, Indiana," or "Oh, here's this map, it's San Diego, awesome." We're meeting someone from that place and building connections with their teachers in classrooms. So we just Skyped today with the class. They were from Southern Indiana. They were really nice. They want to Skype with us again. So not only are we saying, "Hey, we figured out where you are, nice to meet you," but "Hey, let's work together as a networked classroom." So now we have 2 other classrooms so far this year that we've met with, that we now have a connection with. They're the same grade level. They're going to be doing science experiments too. We may be talking about the same things, and now they have an even bigger audience of people to share and collaborate with because they have this connection through Skype.
So thinking about classrooms that you can connect with, a really interesting story was when we were doing the equity in schools project last year. My class Skyped with another school that's only 3.5 miles north of here and a little bit west. And it's really close, and our kids understand that not all schools are 98% African American. And actually in our classroom last year, we were, in this particular period, 100% African American. And we Skyped with them, and they had a whole list of questions to ask, and we were ready to talk about budgets and funding. And my class looks at the other class, and they all go, "They got white kids up in their school." And that's all they could talk about. And so we had 2 options as teachers. The teacher on the other end and I could have said, "I can't believe you said that. That's not what the question was. We're turning off the Skype." Or we could leverage a teachable moment. And so we went with the latter. We said, "Wait a second, why, talk more about that." And the kids were bashful at first. They're like, "Are we going to get in trouble?" We said, "No, just use your respectful language. Why was that your first reaction?" And they said, "Because look at all those white kids they got in their school." And then they're kind of looking in the back of the screen. They go, "There's an Asian kid up in that class." And that boy, is he Mexican? And wondering, like, it was, you know, Kmart, and that school had a wider variety of children to choose from, like, oh, they got to go to the kids store, and they got some this kind of kid and that kind of kid, but we only have this selection here. What's going on with that? But the really interesting thing was that other class then started saying, wait a second, there are only African American students in that classroom, and they, you know, were a little bit more politically correct, but they said a really interesting question that came up in the other class. One of the kids raised her hand and very timidly asked, excuse me, and her teacher said, go ahead. She goes, I'm kind of afraid that this question's insulting, and they said, go for it. And she said, I thought that we learned last quarter that Brown versus Board of Education and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ended segregation, so how come that school's all black? Wow, that was a really cool question. And all of our kids were like, yeah, wait a second, how come that is happening? So they had this really deep, authentic conversation about neighborhoods and social economics and different types of school zoning that they would have never had they just read about all the facts in the school. We could have given them a graph of CPS schools and said, here's the demographic, and it wouldn't have hit home as much as when they scribed with that other class. So we thought that was a really powerful moment.
So Kid Blog, you just saw a good example of our kids using a kid-friendly blog space. So if you're an adult and you follow bloggers, you maybe follow someone who's on Blogger, someone who's on WordPress, Kid Blog actually has this great, we have this problem too, and we have younger kids. Everything has like an age thing. Like you have to be 13 and have an email and a password to log in, and we don't have that. So there's a lot of social media that we're prevented from joining, but there's some really great people doing kid social media. So Kid Blog is a free service where kids can go on and blog. So in my science classroom, they use the blog as like a teaching tool. So they do an experiment, they write all about it, they post it on their blog, their family and friends can see it. But how we've leveraged this to become a bigger than like, so hey mom, can you like read my blog, or hey grandma, you don't live here, do you want to read this? We've formed a partnership with 4 other schools. There's a guy in England, his blog is on here, but he does something called quad blogging. So quad obviously being the 4. He matches up 4 classrooms of the same age. So my 3rd and 4th graders are a classroom of 4. They're in the United States. We have a partnership with a school in Singapore, a partnership with a school in 2 partnerships with schools in the UK. So we take turns. Every week is someone's like blog week. So this week, our kids was their week. Everybody else, the other 3 schools, read our kids' blogs and gave them comments. So first of all, when we write, the one thing that we want back, like in a traditional setting, right? You write, your teacher reads it. If you're lucky and it's really awesome, it goes on the bulletin board, and at like report card pickup, maybe your mom gets to see it. But with the blogging and having the partnerships with the 3 other schools, these kids have a huge audience of not just, okay, friends and family, I can send out the link and hope parents check it. They have kids their own age reading their own stuff. They're reading stuff from kids all over the world. What are they learning about in Singapore? Well, we know because we read their blogs and we hear about what they're doing and we comment back to them. They know that someone's reading their blog. I will tell you what, before they knew that, they'd be like, yeah, this is good, published, done. And now they're like, ooh, like 6 people wrote a comment on here. And so like the next time they do it, knowing that they have this bigger audience, they're very careful, they're wanting to make sure it's richer work, they're wanting to make sure that it's interesting and exciting, because when they look at the blog roll, they're like, that person got 10 comments, I want 10 comments. They want to make sure that their writing is where it should be. And you may not think that writing and science are things that go together in the world, but my kids are really able to share what they're learning, talk about experiments, and almost all the kids who comment on their blogs are like, that sounds like it was so fun, did you like doing that experiment? So they're having these conversations with kids their own age around the world that they've never met, and then they're reading what other kids are doing. It's a pretty dynamic experience for them.
Speaking of blogs, they've all realized that they can scan each other's QR codes, so they're kind of going blog happy over here. Even though they've all read each other's blogs before, somehow the content is so much more exciting when it comes off a QR code. So one example of students amplifying their voices is one of the students sitting here who's going to talk to you in a little bit wanted to blog during the strike. So during the strike, she said, I'm reading all this on the in newspapers and on the news, and they're talking about me all the time. They're saying Chicago public school students, and she's thinking, wait, that's me. I want to say something back. Can I use the blog? Which I thought was pretty rad, considering the fact that 2 years ago the kids were afraid to talk to a grown-up in the classroom, and now they're like, wait a second, I want to say something to the Chicago Tribune talking about me. So she wrote a blog post about how she felt during the strike, and within a day you can see she got 29 comments from all over the world. That was by the end of the day. So I think she posted this around 4, and I have to approve all the comments, so if something, you know, inappropriate or somewhat shady comes through, we certainly don't approve it. But if they use grown-up language, we allowed it to be posted. Any ideas were good ideas. And 29 comments in just a couple hours. I called her and I said, you have 29 comments. And she said, I have 12 comments? I have 12 comments. And I was like, no, you have 29 comments. Oh my God, Dad! So then she wanted to post a follow-up, and it really got her thinking, like, all these people care what I have to say. So that was really neat. So that takes us to the global community, and I think that was a good segue, because the reason they all got to her blog was because I tweeted the blog link out, and then Autumn retweeted it, and then a bunch of, I think maybe Alex Sobel retweeted it again. So now we're getting into not just the people that Ms. Lather and I know, in loose quotation marks, but people we've never met before. And so using Twitter, we're able to get access to lots of people. So last year when they were learning about schools, and we did get around to talking about school budgets, and the kids had a really interesting idea of how much things cost in the classroom. So we used QR codes as like a Price is Right to find out what things cost. They thought that the Promethean board cost $5 million, and they thought that Miss Megara, because I'm clearly so valuable, was paid $1,000 a year, and they thought the garbage can should be worth 25 cents. So they created one spreadsheet with their estimates, and then they went around and scanned the QR code to find the actual price. So like the kids are doing now, I had a QR code with the average teacher salary, and then all of the other things had it, and the kids were flabbergasted. They were like, why don't we just burn all our garbage and throw it out the window? Why are we spending so much on a garbage can? Come on! So they tweeted what they think, their reactions and what they wanted the school to spend money on. And then they got responses from people from all over the country. So Mr. Prosser, who I then met because of this, is a teacher in Washington State, and I actually still don't know this gentleman, but they gave them feedback, which was really neat.
And so we've also been using, this is the first year I've actually used Twitter in the classroom. We used it a little bit at the end of last year. Jenny was a little more free about it than I was. I was like, I don't think I'm ready. But we've been using it a lot this year in the classrooms that I'm connecting with through Mystery Skype. I'm knowing their teachers through Twitter. So we're using our classroom, or I guess our school, Twitter handle to tweet out like the ideas. So after the kids are done with the Skype, they get to express themselves about what they thought about it, what they found was interesting. And we've created our own classroom hashtag. So we're using MTA Learns to hashtag everything that we're doing, to get them in the good practice of hashtagging, because that's so important. When you hashtag your Kim Kardashian stuff, you want to make sure it's done properly. And also, just so they know, we want to attach what they're doing to a bigger idea. So if they go home and they have a family member on Twitter, we tweet at school, you can follow us, you can follow our hashtag. So they're doing all of those things within the classroom in a way that we talk about in schools a lot, like the walled garden. Like, we don't want our kids to have their own like cell phones out and tweeting away what they're doing, because that obviously leaves us with a lot of possibilities. But we're doing it in a way with Edmodo, with Twitter, where the teachers are approving it, like Jenny was saying, approving the comments, where we're protecting our kids, making sure they're safe, but we're letting them out into the world of, first of all, social media, but also just out into the general world to share what they're learning, which for a lot of our kids, the classroom has been where they've done their learning, and maybe a little bit at home. It's gone between those two places. And with social media and with the technology in our classroom, we've literally exploded it into the global community for them. And it's giving them not only what Jenny was saying, not only does it give them the ability to share their learning, but they recognize that. They recognize in themselves that, like, people want to hear what I have to say. It's important, and we want to either tweet it, we want to put it on Edmodo, we want to put it on our blog, we want a QR code attached to it because we have something important to say. And I think for kids in our community especially, we want that more than anything.
So quick disclaimer, in case there are any attorneys in the audience. Yes, we do realize that the Twitter minimum age for tweeting and having an account is 13, and no, none of these students are 13 yet. So how are we getting away with this? Well, if you notice, all the Twitter handles here are the same as NTA Students 1. And what we do is we use a Google form or our Edmodo pages to post prompts. And then we teach our kids to put one-sentence responses in there. Now, we do tell them about the $140 character limit, but not all students are at the learning level yet where they can, remember T1, H, space, and remembering what their characters are. So we say limit it to a sentence, we truncate it, and then we go on during a prep and we tweet everything out. Then what we do is we'll screenshot, just like you see here, all the response tweets and post it to our Edmodo page or our website so that everyone can see what we're doing. So that way the kids get the feedback and the tweetbacks and they're able to share their thinking, but it's still safe because they're not sharing any personal information with the world, who might not all have the best of intentions with our students' ideas. So that was just a really quick way to show how we're amplifying all the students' voices. Right now, we told them the opposite of amplification. We said, please de-amplify your voices. But just in the spirit of being completely confusing to them, we're going to have them come up on the stage and talk some more when we just told them to stop talking. So some of them might be feeling a little bit shy because they're used to sharing their voices from behind a digital device. So for some of them, this is the first time speaking in person to someone who they don't know. So if you don't mind giving them a little bit of freedom to be shy, but we're going to go ahead and they're going to share with you their final thoughts about how social media has amplified their own learning.
Hi, my name is Contra. I'm currently enrolled to National Teachers Academy and I'm in 7th grade. Social media has amplified my learning because I am able to connect with people around the world without leaving my seat and not carrying a book bag that weighs more than me.
My name is Miracle Wright and I'm in 7th grade. Social media amplifies my learning because I can get my word out about my beliefs instead of saying it to one person. I can say it to the whole world. Notice that big difference?
My name is Johnny Brooks Neal and I'm in 6th grade. Social media amplifies my learning because I get to express myself in another way than just pencil and paper, and no one can tell me to be quiet.
My name is Brittany and I'm in 6th grade. Social media amplifies my learning because usually I'm shy and I don't want to speak my mind, but with the blog and Twitter and many other things, people listen to me and can hear me clearly.
Hi, my name is Malia, and social media amplifies my learning because I am the one giving advice and I get new people to give me advice.
Hi, my name is Trinity Scott. I'm in 4th grade. Social media can amplify my learning because I can meet with new people with new opinions.
Hi, my name is Maverick Johnson. I'm in 5th grade and I go to National Teachers Academy. Social media has amplified my learning because I get to learn more things and share my work with people all around the world, and they give me examples that I get to write next on my blog.
Hi, my name is Boomy Arahi. Social media amplifies my learning because I get to learn from lots of people instead of just one.
So they were trying to think of what to say to you. So yesterday they had little index cards and they wrote down like a lot of different ideas of what they wanted to say, and then they were sharing their thoughts, and they were kind of getting a little salty with one another because they were like, hey, she took my idea, that's what I wanted to say, and I said, that's really good because that means they agree with you. So can we give them another round of applause? So one final thought we wanted to leave you with, and this young lady couldn't be with us today because she just found out that she has strep throat, unfortunate. But we want to leave you with her words because they really resonated with us when we heard them. She actually said this at a conference this summer. We took them to the Chicago Public Schools Technology Leadership Summit, and they asked her in the audience, we did a Q&A session, they said, well, young lady, why do you care? Why should we worry about technology and social media in the classroom? And she said, I like using iPads because I have something to say. And now people finally listen. And she went on to explain how throughout her life, everyone's telling her to shut up. That at home, they're saying, you're being too loud, shut up. Her cousins and brothers and sisters are saying to her, shut up. And the teachers don't say shut up, but they say level 0, which is teacher talk for shut up. And so we're constantly telling them why they can't be talking, and this is an arena where we're saying, say as much as you want. We really want to hear your voices, and so it was really nice for her to remind us of that. So, in the vein of social media, we have a QR code for you. If you want to scan it, it will take you to a site with all of our links and our information. And if your QR code is not working, we have a bailout link right there where you can just write that down, tinyurl.com/SMW-in-CPS. At this point, we want to open it up for any questions, comments, complaints, and I know that we have just a couple minutes left, and we're going to invite the kids back up on the stage as well who are trying to scan the QR code to also answer your questions. So thank you so much for coming.